He abandoned his wife in the forest. What he saw later shocked him to the core. The forest lay quiet under the warm evening sun, the leaves rustling faintly as Valentin stopped the car on a narrow path, saying he had a surprise. Eudokia wore a long, bright red dress, her favorite, which he had asked her to wear for a special moment. She was weak, worn out from the toll of her illness, but she trusted him. Valentin had told her he wanted to take her on one last outing, to draw strength from nature together. For a moment she felt loved, for a moment. But what happened next made the blood freeze in her veins. Before she could understand what was happening, Valentin had roughly led her to a tree. "Just for a moment," he muttered as he tied her wrist to the trunk with a rope. Eudokia didn't resist, too surprised, too exhausted. As he bound her other hand, she looked into his eyes. There was nothing but coldness. "It's better this way," he whispered, took a step back and vanished among the trees. No glance back, no farewell. Eudokia was left alone. The bark of the tree cut into her skin. The long red dress barely moved in the gentle breeze. She was tied, not only physically but emotionally, to a lie, to a marriage that was nothing more than an illusion. Tears burned in her eyes, not because of the ropes, but because of the man who had abandoned her like an empty promise. Yet as night fell upon her, she had no idea her story was not over. She would fight, not just to survive, but for justice. The night fell over the forest like a cold veil. Eudokia was freezing. Her red dress offered little protection against the dropping temperatures. Her arms ached from the tight rope, and her legs trembled uncontrollably from exhaustion. She tried to call out, but her voice was hoarse, her throat dry. Hunger gnawed at her, and the overwhelming sense of helplessness threatened to break her mind. In the darkness, she heard twigs snapping, the distant calls of owls, and again, the voice in her head asking, "Why? Why him? Why me?" Just as she thought her body would give out, she heard footsteps, heavy, steady, calm. From between the trees emerged a broad-shouldered man with a rifle slung across his back, a hunter, his face grim yet alert. He froze when he saw Eudokia, a woman, frail and pale, in a torn red dress, tied to a tree. Their eyes met. No words were spoken, yet in his gaze there was more understanding than she had felt from anyone in months. With a knife, he cut the ropes. Eudokia collapsed into his arms, powerless. He didn't ask much, but his hands were gentle, his movements calm. "Bogdan," he introduced himself briefly as he helped her up and draped his coat over her trembling shoulders. In that moment, Eudokia understood. The forest had taken away the man she once trusted, but perhaps now it was sending someone to save her. She couldn't yet know if this stranger was an angel or just another shadow. But one thing was certain: she was no longer alone. Bogdan's cabin lay hidden deep within the forest, surrounded by pines, ferns, and the gentle rustling of nature. There, far from any civilization, Eudokia began to recover, slowly at first, then with growing strength. The hunter spoke little, but his actions were filled with care. He brewed hot infusions from fragrant herbs, treated her wounded wrists with poultices made from pine needles, and prepared a bed of soft moss and furs. The fire crackled quietly in the cabin while the rain fell outside, and inside, for the first time in weeks, something like safety began to grow. With each passing day, her strength returned little by little, but more than her body, it was her soul that began to heal. In the silence, her spirit started to breathe again. Sometimes Bogdan would tell small stories from the forest, about animals, tracks, and the changing seasons. In his calm, rugged voice lay entire worlds, and Eudokia listened to him as if hearing life itself for the first time. He never asked about Valentin or the life she had before. He gave her space. And in that very silence, a gentle bond began to form between them, stronger than any comforting word. One particularly clear morning, as dew still clung to the grass, they sat in silence beside the river. Eudokia was barefoot, her red dress now replaced by simple, warm clothing. She looked at Bogdan and softly asked, "Why didn't you just leave me there?" He was silent for a moment, then looked into her eyes and replied, "Because you don't leave a life behind. Not when it's still breathing." In that moment, Eudokia understood. Here was someone who expected nothing from her, yet would give everything. And among herbs, fire, and heartbeats, something began to bloom that she had long thought lost: hope. Autumn had returned when Eudokia came back to the city after weeks in the forest, not broken but upright, with a clear gaze and a strength no one had ever expected from her. Her return was a shock to many, especially to Valentin. He had believed she was dead, gone, finished, erased from his life. But now she stood there, alive, with a lawyer by her side and a detailed report of his crime. The police arrested him, the press reported on the case, and suddenly everything came crashing down on him: his lies, his attempt to trade her life for his own comfort. The trial became a public reckoning. Eudokia calmly recounted how he had tied her up, how she had starved, how she was meant to die, and how she had survived. Valentin tried to justify himself, but his words rang hollow in the face of the evidence, the medical reports, and the statements from doctors and investigators. His affair quickly distanced herself, his acquaintances turned away, and in the end, there was a clear verdict: several years in prison for attempted murder, unlawful imprisonment, and fraud. For Eudokia, it wasn't a triumph, it was justice. After the trial, she didn't return to her old life. She returned to Bogdan, to the place where the forest had healed her heart. In a simple wooden house not far from the old cabin, she began a new chapter. Her illness was in remission, her will unbroken. She planted herbs, gathered berries, and helped other women who had endured similar pain. And sometimes, when the wind whispered through the pines, she stood there in a new red dress, not a victim anymore, but a survivor. And at her side, the silent hunter who had given her life back. This story is more than one of betrayal and justice. It is a symbol of inner strength, healing, and new beginnings. Eudokia was abandoned by the man she loved in her weakest moment, left to die. Yet in that deepest darkness, she not only found her way back to life, but also someone who saw her, protected her, and lifted her up without expecting anything in return. Sometimes it takes being completely broken to truly find yourself. Not all wounds are visible, but with time, care, and genuine kindness, even the most fragile heart can become strong again. Eudokia's story reminds us, even if someone gives up on you, you must never give up on yourself. Life can surprise you, often exactly when you least expect it. Did this story move you? Then give the video a like and share it with someone who needs a little courage right now. Subscribe to our channel and turn on the bell for more powerful stories that show just how strong life can be. What would you have done in Eudokia's place? Let us know in the comments.